In this movie, I'll show you two options that are going to make a big difference where this image is concerned, and that's the remove setting and reduce noise. I'll start by double-clicking on Smart Sharpen for the bottommost of the two smart objects. And then I'll click the plus button in order to zoom in as well as wake up the preview. And now notice this option right there, Remove, which is set right now to Gaussian blur. If you click on that option, you'll see that there's three different settings available to you: Gaussian blur, lens blur, and motion blur. Now, Photoshop isn't really removing those blurs, it's actually using those blurs. That should be the name of this option, because Photoshop actually uses blurring to create its halos. The simplest of the blurring effects, where these three are concerned, is Gaussian blur. And it's great if you're sharpening to account for the resampling of an image. For example, you reduce the image size and now you want to sharpen things up a little bit. Or if you're sharpening scanned artwork, it can be the way to go as well. But if you're working with a digital photograph, the best setting is this next one down, which is lens blur. Which is why, by the way, it is the default setting. It's a little slower than Gaussian blur, but it does some incredible work. And it changes the nature of the halos. Did you see that? So this is the before version set to Gaussian blur. Just want you to notice how the halos spread out more. And then this is the effect of lens blur, which tightens up the halos throughout the image. Now you may recall that I originally had the radius value set for print at 1.5 pixels. That's what I determined to be the ideal setting. But that was the ideal setting where Gaussian blur was concerned. But when you're working with lens blur, you typically want to double that value, which is why I'm going to go ahead and take it up to 3 pixels. Now, you might figure we need to reduce that amount value, but remember from the previous movie that the opacity of this effect is set to 60%. And that gets mixed into the preview, by the way. We are seeing the effect of those blend settings here inside the Smart Sharpen dialog box. The other thing at work inside this image is that it contains a ton of noise. And by noise, I mean random fluctuations between neighboring pixels that have nothing to do with the actual scene. Noise is invented by the camera. And in this case, I had my ISO cranked up to 500. And where this particular camera was concerned, that meant that I got a lot of noise. Luckily, we have this reduce noise option available to us. And what I recommend you do is just click inside of it and press Shift up arrow in order to increase it in increments of 10%. And you're going to have to wait a beat for the preview to catch up with you. But you want to take that value up until most of the noise inside the image goes away. You don't necessarily want to get rid of all the noise, because that could mean that you're getting rid of some of the detail as well, and you want to keep that detail intact. So that's why I'm not going to take, even though this is about the noisiest image ever, I'm not going to take the reduced noise value all the way up to 100%, because then we do start to lose some edge detail. Where this image is concerned, I'm going to take reduced noise to 50%, but of course, you can go your own way. And you just want to gauge what you see on screen. Now I'll go ahead and click OK in order to accept that effect. And just so you can see what a big difference that made, I'll press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. So this is the butterfly subject to a higher radius value combined with a remove setting of Gaussian blur, as well as a reduced noise value of 0%. And here's the image if I press Ctrl or Command-Z again, set to lens blur, which is better when sharpening digital photographs, and a reduced noise value of 50%. And to really get a sense of how this image is going to look when you print it, go ahead and press Ctrl-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to center the image, and then zoom in to the 50% zoom ratio. And now I'll turn off the Smart Sharpen filter so that we can see the original unsharpened version of the image. And then I'll press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on the Mac in order to bring back that sharpness. And what we have now is a much more subtle effect that's going to render out very nicely in print.